We are now less than a week away from the start of the federal Real ID enforcement by TSA. Starting May the 7th, if you don't have a Real ID driver's license, ID card, or a passport, you will not be able to board a domestic flight. Getting a Real ID is optional in Pennsylvania, but if you want to continue using your driver's license to fly domestically, you'll need a Real ID on or after May the 7th. To date, around 3 million Pennsylvanians have already gotten their Real ID. So especially if you are planning to fly soon and don't have a Real ID or a passport, you'll need to gather your documents and come visit us at one of our driver's license centers. You can find exactly what you need at our PennDOT website. Our PennDOT team works really hard to serve customers quickly and efficiently, but we're seeing huge increases in customer volumes at our driver's license centers as we begin to get closer and closer to May the 7th. Real IDs have been available in Pennsylvania for 6 years now, and they're still available and will be after May 7th's TSA deadline, not PennDOT's deadline. So if you don't have immediate plans or you already have a valid passport, you may want to hold off for a few weeks until the rush at the driver's license centers dies down. Now, I know there are a few questions that were submitted, and I'm happy to answer those now.
Thanks. Our first question is, why do some states have 100% Real ID adoption and we don't here in Pennsylvania?
So Pennsylvania General Assembly years ago decided that Pennsylvania would be an optional state, meaning that drivers had the opportunity to get a Real ID now for 6 years, but didn't have to. Some states, like Georgia, for example, the General Assembly and the law in that state required drivers to upgrade their driver's license to a Real ID at the time of their renewal. And so Georgia, for example, would have a very high compliance rate, near 100%, because it was a mandatory requirement in that state and a handful of others. Pennsylvania, because of Pennsylvania law, made it optional for Pennsylvania's drivers.
Thanks. Is the state doing anything additional to accommodate last-minute applicants as we get so close to the deadline?
Well, we're working really hard at the driver's license centers, and we have opened them up on Mondays, 57 of them across the state, and meaning our folks in those 57 centers are working 6 days a week, just Sundays off. And so I'm proud of the work that's been done at the PennDOT driver's license centers. We do our best to triage the line to make sure people have the documents they need, or to separate out people that are getting their picture taken or some other driver's license transaction. We're working really hard, 6 days a week. If you're in line before we close, we'll accommodate you because you were in line before closure. We're working really hard. Again, human nature. A lot of folks have waited to the last minute here, and because of that the requirement, optional license in Pennsylvania, it pushed everybody to the last minute.
The State Department of Labor recently announced a way to get an on-the-spot birth certificate. Is that something that's available for people who need Real ID?
So the Department of Health and Bureau of Vital Records this week in Lancaster began a pilot program for the issuance of birth certificates over the counter for folks that had pre-registered. I'm unaware of how that will roll out to unemployment centers across the state with respect to vital records. Of course, you can get a duplicate birth certificate at the vital records offices across the state. And of course, a birth certificate is necessary for the Real ID unless you have a passport. So getting the Real ID requires the passport or the birth certificate. If you don't have a birth certificate, the vital records offices across the state and the current plan and the current regiment to get that duplicate birth certificate probably is your best bet until the full rollout of the duplicate birth certificates at the unemployment centers.
Thank you. What is the fastest way to get a Real ID?
The fastest way is to go to one of the 15 over-the-counter Real ID centers across the state. PennDOT's website would highlight those 15. When you go to one of those 15 with the documents you need, you will walk out with the Real ID. If you don't go to one of those 15 and you go to one of the other driver license centers, the documents are collected and your Real ID is mailed to you and you receive it in about 2 weeks. Which, by the way, is very common. Most of the states are doing the mail ID. Pennsylvania is one of the few that does the over-the-counter option for our residents. And it, again, highlights the extra step PennDOT has taken to try and meet the needs of folks and deliver the Real IDs as quick as possible.
Thanks. If someone doesn't have a Real ID driver's license or ID card, what else are they able to use to fly?
Well, of course, the passport is the most common things that folks would have. Military ID would be another. But the star on the driver's license indicating the real ID is really the easiest way. I'm a little concerned about folks that are going to rely on a passport because most people don't carry the passport if they're going to fly from Pittsburgh to Chicago. But if you're going to rely on the passport for boarding that domestic flight because you don't have a real ID, you have to remember to take it with you to the airport so that you can get past the TSA checkpoint.
Thanks. And I know we've talked a lot about this topic, but if someone's had a name change, what other items do they need to bring to prove that?
Well, they'd have to go to the courthouse, or they'd have to get the documentation necessary to highlight marriages or divorces. If there have been court-ordered name changes, documentation that would highlight that name change that is from the issuing county, primarily. So, again, admittedly, this is complicated for a lot of women that have had name changes through their life, but it is a federal requirement. This is not PennDOT's rule. These are not PennDOT rules. These are federal rules. All the states are having to deal with this, and I feel bad for women when it comes to having to collect all these additional documents, but in order to prove your identity and the name that appears on your real ID, federal requirements.
Thanks. Well, that's the last of our submitted questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks.